Okay, so in this part of the tutorial, I'm just going to show you how to set up the picker class in iOS. Now, this will be a little more complicated than in Android. We only needed really a few lines in Android to accomplish the same task, but in iOS we have to create an entirely new class, and that's what we'll do. We'll create this class that will represent a picker, and then once we create this class and implement all these methods that will set the picker up, we'll just be able to create a new instance of that picker, and then we can assign it the values, okay? So it's going to be a little bit longer and a little bit more complicated than setting the picker up in Android, or in Android it's called a spinner, but it's the same thing, and in the next part we'll show you how to create a new instance of a picker. Alright, so now we've got our basic layout down in iOS. Let's start implementing some functionality. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to implement the spinners, or in this case in iOS they're called pickers, which are going to be this and this. So we're going to implement the picker class and then we'll add the handlers for them. Okay, so if we go over to viewcontroller.cs, again this is a bit more effort than we'd have to do with implementing the spinners in Android, even though it's a very similar sort of concept. So we're going to start by making this generic picker class so that we can kind of instantiate a few instances of the pickers. So we'll have just kind of one class to represent both pickers, but then we'll create a new one for this and a new one for this. Alright, so let me show you what I mean. So what we'll do is, this is first going to be a public class, and we'll call this variable picker, and it will produce a type UI picker view model, not the picker view. Okay, and we're just going to set it up there. So the first thing we want to do is we want to create this string array, and this is going to be called list of variables. And we're going to create this string called selected variable, and this will just kind of help us determine which variable from the picker that we've selected, and we're going to implement get and set methods. So when I do this get set here, this just kind of means that it implements getters and setters already for the variable, so that if we assign a variable a value, it will set it, and if we need to get selected variable value, we can get it. Okay, so that's all that's doing there. And I should add the semicolon there. So we need to add semicolon after get and one after set. Okay, and after this we're going to create an event. So public event, and we'll call this is an event handler, and we'll just call this variable selected. So this will basically notify us if a variable is selected. Okay, next thing we're going to do is we're going to build a constructor for this class. This is going to be variable picker, and it's going to take in only the one parameter, which is going to be a string array, which is basically going to contain, we're going to call this variables, and this string array is going to contain our list of variables that we're going to have from the drop-down menu. So this is going to be pretty much the same as the stuff that we had in the Android version. So if I just open that up and open main-activity.cs, it's going to be these same lists here. Okay, so we've got this going, and then we're going to finish off this constructor here. So this is going to assign the list of variables to be equal to variables. Okay, so this is just a constructor method, and yeah, so within this class we have to create a bunch of methods to handle retrieving and allocating various values in the spinner, or the picker in this case. So this is just one of the methods as a constructor so that we can create a new instance of a variable picker, and that's what we'll do in a little bit here. Okay, so the next method we have to implement is going to be an onVariable selected. So it's going to be a public void onVariable selected. So it's going to be called, no parameters to take in. And basically what this is going to do is it's going to handle what will happen if a variable is selected. So if variable selected is not equal to null, then we'll have this happen, and all we're going to do is variable selected this, comma, event args dot empty. Okay, so this just says if the variable selected is not null, so if we do have a variable selected, the event has been triggered, then we're just going to basically set the variable selected event. Okay, so this just basically is allowing us to make something happen once a variable is selected, so when the variable selected is not null. Okay, but we'll add the official handlers in later. This is just a formality that we have to include. Okay, so the next one is going to be, and in fact there's some autocomplete methods, so I'll only begin typing some of these out. So that first one's going to be selected, and as you can see it gives us this option here, so I'm just going to add that in, but I'll change this up a little bit. So basically what this is going to do is it's going to assign the selected variable to be the list of variables, so that's going to be the list that our picker contains, and it's going to choose the current row that it's on. Okay, and then it's going to call the onVariableSelected method. So this is just saying when a variable is selected, we're going to assign the selected variable to be the list of variables that corresponds with the row that we have selected, and it's going to call the onVariableSelected method. Okay, so then we have another one. This one's called getComponentCount, and that's this second option here. So I'm just going to click it, and it also fills it in. And again, we're just going to change a couple things. We're just going to say return 1, because when I say components, if we go to main.storyboard, when I say components, I mean how many columns there are. So there's only one column here, but we can have a few different columns within a spinner. So in this case, we only have one, and we're always going to have one, so we're just going to return that. Otherwise, you can return however many columns you have. The next one is going to be get the number of rows in the component. So get rows in component, again, the second one here. And I'm just going to return the list of variables dot length. So this is figuring out how many rows. So if we go to the main.storyboard again, you see there's 3 rows that you can see here, so we'd return 3, so it's basically just returning the length of the list of variables. Okay, and then next we're going to implement the getTitle method. So getTitle, and this is just going to be the first one up here. And what we're going to do is we're going to return the list of variables at the specified row, and that's just basically going to return the name of the variable that we're on. Okay, so this is how to implement the variable picker class. These are all methods that we'll have to include, and then what we can do is we can basically just start a couple new instances of the picker and initialize them to be these ones. Okay, but we're going to do that next part. First we have to initialize some variables, then we'll start some instances of these pickers, and then we'll go from there. Okay, so this is just how to set your picker class up. We haven't added the handlers yet. This is just basically this will allow us to create a new instance of a picker. Okay, so yeah, we'll get into actually initializing the pickers in the next part. This part of the tutorial just involves setting up the picker class in iOS. So what we did is we created the generic picker class, and we implemented the methods needed in this class, but we didn't add the handlers, so the picker is not yet complete. Nor did we create an instance of the pickers that will contain our list of variables, but that's what we'll do in this part coming up. So by now you should be able to set up a generic picker class. So I tried to use pretty generic variable names so that you can use this kind of a picker class to represent any picker in iOS. So we implemented one with just one component, so one column, but if you want you can try and implement a couple of different columns, and that's very useful too.